If everything has a creator, who created God? Before you were born, someone made a decision for you. They chose your God. They chose your book. They told you, this is where everything begins. And at the center of every religion, every tradition, every sacred text, there is one idea they all share. The universe did not come from nothing. Something caused it. Something started it. And that something, they say, is God. But today I want to ask the question that most people never finish asking. Not to attack anyone's faith. Not to tell you what to believe. But because the question itself is one of the most important questions a human being can sit with. If everything has a creator, who created God? Let's start with the argument that built this belief in the first place. Look at a watch lying in a field. Gears. Springs. Hands that move in perfect sequence. You would never assume the wind assembled it. You would know, someone made this. Now look at the human eye. 100 million photoreceptors. A lens that adjusts automatically. A system so precise that the world's best engineers cannot fully replicate it. If the watch needs a maker, something far greater made the eye. This is the argument that convinced billions of people across thousands of years. The universe is too ordered, too precise, too specific to have come from nothing. Therefore, God. It's clean. It's intuitive. And for most of human history, it felt unanswerable. But here's where it gets complicated. The same people who make this argument also say, God is not complex. This is important. This is not a small detail. The greatest theologians in history, Aquinas, Avicenna, Maimonides. They all said the same thing, God is not made of parts. God is not built from components. God does not have layers or mechanisms that need to be assembled. God is pure being. Simple. Unified. Indivisible. And because of that he doesn't need a creator. Only things with parts need a maker. God has no parts. Therefore, no maker needed. That's the real argument. Not the weak version. The real one. And I want you to hold it in your mind. Because in a few minutes, we're going to test it. Now meet the uncaused first cause. Aristotle proposed it. Aquinas built a cathedral on top of it. Every chain of cause and effect has to stop somewhere. You cannot have an infinite chain stretching backwards forever. Because then nothing would have ever started. So at the beginning of all things, there must be something that was never itself caused. Something that simply is. The foundation underneath everything else. And they call that, God. On paper, this is a serious argument. Philosophers still take it seriously today. But here is the question Aquinas never fully answered. Even if you accept that there must be an uncaused first cause, why does it have to be personal? Think about what we're actually claiming here. This uncaused first cause, it could be a mathematical principle, it could be a quantum law so fundamental it precedes the universe itself. It could be something so alien to human thought that our language collapses trying to describe it. But somewhere along the way, it became a person. It became someone who listens. Someone who speaks. Someone who sends books. Someone who cares whether you eat pork. Someone who designed hell for the people who asked the wrong questions. How did the cold, logical uncaused first cause become a God who gets angry when you miss prayers? No philosopher has ever fully bridged that gap. They just quietly moved past it. And if you stop and stand in that gap, it is enormous. Now let's talk about science. But carefully. Because this is where people on both sides start cheating. The Big Bang tells us the universe had a beginning. Time itself had a beginning. Before the Big Bang, the question what came before may not be meaningful. Because before requires time, and time didn't exist yet. Many believers heard this and said, see a beginning. A creation. Proof. And that's a reasonable response. But then physicists like Stephen Hawking proposed models where the universe is self-contained. No edge, no boundary, no moment where a creator needed to intervene. Lawrence Krauss argued the universe could emerge from quantum nothingness. Others point to the multiverse universes constantly being generated by deeper physical laws. Here's what I want you to notice, none of this is proven. All of it is contested. Science has not solved the origin of the universe. But neither has religion. The honest answer from both sides, if they're being truly honest, is the same three words, we don't know. But here is what we do know about human beings. We are the only species on Earth that knows it will die. You have known, since you were old enough to understand language, that one day you will stop existing. That everyone you love will stop existing. That the sun will eventually burn out, and the universe will eventually go cold, and somewhere in all of that you will be gone. That is the most terrifying thing a mind can hold. And into that terror, every culture on Earth, independently, without contact with each other, invented a God. Not one God. Not the same God. But a God. A presence. A watcher. A meaning. Psychologists call it terror management theory. When humans are reminded of their own death, their belief in a higher power intensifies. It's measurable. It's consistent. It works across cultures. We also know this, the human brain is wired to find patterns. To find agency behind events. To hear a sound in the dark and immediately ask, who is there, not what? Who? Because a universe with a who is survivable. A universe with no one watching. No one keeping score. No one waiting for you on the other side. That is a universe most human minds cannot bear to inhabit. So we filled it? Not necessarily with lies. Maybe with hope. Maybe with genuine perception of something real, but the need was there before the answer. And that matters. Now I want to come back to the simple God. The God with no parts. If God is truly simple, truly beyond complexity, then he is also beyond personality. Personality requires memory. God has no parts, so how does memory work? Personality requires the ability to change, to respond, to feel, to decide. But a God outside of time cannot change. What he decides was decided before time existed. So who are you praying to if God is outside of time? Your prayer was already heard before you were born. His answer was already given before the universe existed. The conversation was over before it started. Then what is prayer? And if God cannot change, cannot be moved, cannot be persuaded, then why do a billion people bow their heads every day and ask him for things? The simple God solves the creation problem, but he dismantles the personal God in the process. You cannot have both. The theologians chose both anyway, and called it mystery. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Not does God exist? That's too big for one video. But this, what would change if he didn't? Would the sunrise mean less? Would your love for the people in your life become smaller? Would the fact that you exist, that you are conscious, that you can ask this question, become less extraordinary? Or would it become more extraordinary that you are not the creation of a plan? That you are an accident that somehow learned to wonder about itself? That in the entire cold dark history of the universe, you happened. Maybe that requires a God. Or maybe it requires something even harder, to look at all of this, the scale of it, the silence of it, and refuse to look away. So I'm asking you, is the question who created God a question that destroys faith? Or a question that, if your faith is real, it should be able to survive? Tell me what you think. Because I genuinely want to know.